Alright, so
While
what's next
Cartwright and the
for
Maquis
Grayson?
forces had already launched assaults on 3 of the gun towers, Grayson would have to reach his objective
Basically, this
via
initial
treacherous
mission
sewers,
is,
canals,
again,
and heavily
similar to the
fortified
landing in
positions.
Normandy. The initial
Grayson had
contingent
once
that has
made it
landed
clear he would never
here,
take
although in this
military
case it
orders
was via
again,
parachute,
but
being to
Cartwright knew if the
deactivate
mission
the
were
artillery
dangerous
guns
enough,
so
he
that the
could
rest
be
of the force can
counted on to
actually arrive.
volunteer.
I will
I
say, in a
often
lot of
thought that
ways, this
Grayson
feels
took
like
these
it's made as a
suicide missions
throwback to the
because he had a
first
death wish to
Resistance
deserve
game,
it.
since it
But
even
he
has the
Again,
narrator
more
from that
something
too.
more, something
He did not
inspired
realize
by
until
the
much later
sci-fi
how
movies
wrong
of
I
the
was.
40s and 50s and 60s, but also with the alien, the war twist.
Alright.
Soundwaves.
In my prime Chimera killing days, I would have steamrolled through Rotterdam without a trouble. But now I'm bringing up the rear of our assault on the gun towers. They think I'm a broken man, that I've lost my edge. They're wrong. My country's abandoned me twice. First when they sentenced me to die, second when they cast me out to fight for a bunch of foreigners. But they haven't broken me yet.
Not for nothing, Grayson. Weren't you the guy who deserted in the first place? For a personal vendetta?
Mr. Hexion, could you do me a favor, please?
If it's... Oh boy, we finally have found the evolution to Dick Layton.
Major Cartwright, we have just destroyed the East Tower. What's your status? Finishing with the South Tower. Grayson, report. Do you read? Damn it, what's taking you so long?
I've had some
I
technical
am seeing what T.O. mentions. Granted, maybe it's part of his development, but he definitely has a lot of that, oh, I can't be wrong, it's everyone else who's the problem kind of attitude.
Don't worry about these minor bits of, they're basically just extra bits of tutorial that tell you, give you a bit of hit tips, in how to handle better some situations.
Well, Joe, that's typical villain mentality. Everybody else is wrong, and I'm the one who's actually got the
Every
right idea.
villain is the hero of their own story, yes.
Oh boy, that would be an interesting twist if Grayson does turn out to be the bad guy.
Well, you take a look at some iconic villains, you'll notice that that's basically the method. Like, you take a look at the Joker in The Dark Knight, he says, yeah, I'm not a monster, I'm just ahead of the curve. Or where we have that moment in Infinity War where Thanos is arguing with Gamora, and Gamora's like, you don't know that. He's like, I'm the only one who knows that. Basically, like, so Thanos is convinced that everybody else is wrong. He's the one who's got the right way to save the universe.
And in terms of villain protagonists, of course, Breaking Bad is a great key example of how you do a villain protagonist who is convinced they're in the right.
Anyway, I didn't talk much about the cover system, so go on.
I did want to say also, now that we see them up close, yeah, I see what you mean, that the Chimera look more cartoonified here.
They just stand there like, duh.
Like, and their faces ironically look more cartoonish as well.
That's mostly because they're not moving. Again, they clearly are, the movement that were mock-up from with the whatever, technology that they used. But the actors did have like a placeholder or something that makes their head static. It doesn't have much facial expression change like on the PS3, which, like you said, it's understandable. Again, limited technology and everything.
We didn't always get the clearest look at their faces in the main game, seeing as how they were constantly rushing us anyway, but now that this game sort of moves slow enough for us to get a good look at their faces too, it does... Again, it's not that they stand still, it's just that their faces ironically look more animated, or, well, rather more cartoonish in a sense. Like, not in a bad sense automatically, but, kind of like they look like they're a different art style.
One thing that you're noticing is that despite, being close to the first game, in terms of, aesthetic and everything, it's not as desaturated. There's still a bit of prevalence of browns, but it's overall technically a bit better than Follow Man, by a bit less gray around.
It is definitely more colorful. I've noticed that there's a bit of blue shades to the main Chimera's faces now.
And apparently the composer is going on with the piano.
Yeah. Again, props to the composer. This is already the most recognizable and most energetic of the Resistance.
Yeah, Gary's
hearing something.
Yeah, Mr. Sharman really loves his. That's the thing, though. From the score I've heard from him in Bioshock Infinite, his thing was more
strings.
There's
in
more
that
string
one.
instruments than.
It's mostly to reflect that theater of America in which the game is supposedly set in. You know,
Don't you mean
something
Britain
right
here?
after the. No, not in Infinite Jova.
Oh.
You know.
You're...
Yeah, that's what we were referring to. Something that was right after the Civil War. Anyway.
It looks like a giant gun.
Water intake
Well,
valves
no, that's not taking the main target, but it will help destroying it.
Oh dear.
Of course, one more Titan. And this time, unfortunately, you know, Cartwright cannot help us with it.
So, does this game have boss
Yeah,
fights?
that's right. He's not helped that much anyway.
A couple so far. Again, I'm still close to the end, but I can tell you there are just a couple. Not a lot, but they are present. So I cannot tell yet if we actually won the jackpot and there is a final boss in this or not.
I guess I'll ask a non-spoiler question then. The bosses that you've seen so far, are they at least good encounters, unlike, you know, Freeze?
I mean, yeah, but if I have to be honest, Jova, I did not mind the Widowmaker encountering Free.
Oh, no. Like,
It
the
was
Widowmaker...
It was mostly just Mick Cutler that was bad.
Well, to be fair, the Widowmaker was the exception to the rule, since pretty much most other bosses were, you know, not really boss
And
fights.
now two more at the same time.
Gotta up that ante. Like, that's the thing,
You
the
can kind of tell, again, this follows kind of the same mentality that a lot of Sony PSP spin-offs tended to have, because God of War Chain of Olympus does something similar to that by having a roster of enemies that is more similar to the one of the first God of War game, and just, you know, ups it a bit more with the kind of encounters that you have, while still having a bit of a personality.
Also, Tia, we mustn't forget the wonderful final boss encounter with that one gorilla chimera who just wouldn't give up, because
It was Sonic Heroes.
it had to be him. It was truly Capelli's real nemesis.
Truly.
Seriously, even seeing the behind-the-scenes stuff on that, like, they were really hyping up the particular gorilla chimera for that game, and I'm
But to
like...
be fair, it was relatively unique in a sense that you had to destroy his armor piece by piece, and then, you know, constantly watched out for his threat. So for the game, yes, it was really unique. It's just that, like I said, it was also one of the few new enemy types, so that was probably the reason why they were banking that much on him.
I think it reminds me of Batman Arkham Asylum.
And yeah, in order to plant the bomb, you have to solve a QT on your own. Just place it there, steady slowly, like that. Which is also the reason why it's best if you do it after cleaning the area, because if you do it while the enemies are still around, your animation is gonna get cancelled as a result. As you can imagine. Alright, time to blow up the joint.
Intake valves destroyed. Heading for the tower.
Yep, those sure are PSP level explosions.
I do think that
Again,
they
like I said, I really get it's one of those cases where developers made this game to be played in the original resolution of the PSP, and they weren't thinking about how.
Upscaling.
And now all those imperfections are right here, clear as day for all of us to see.
The speed with which the Chimera were completing fortifications surprised even the Maquis. 2 weeks before, the Chimera guns that now towered over Rotterdam did not exist. Grayson and Maquis Colonel Roland Mallery would have to set aside their personal differences
Can this marriage
long
be
enough to
saved?
infiltrate and destroy the final gun tower.
No.
Failure to do so meant that the second wave of transports would be destroyed. The fate of myself and every soldier traveling in the
In case you're
second
wondering,
wave
we
of
will actually
transports
meet Parker
lay
in
in
this
the
game
hands of
more
James
properly,
Grayson.
so she's not gonna be just the narrator. Alright, Dwebs. Yeah, and from this point on, since the first 2 chapters is something I tested, from this point on it's a blind playthrough.
Mallery insisted on joining me for the assault on the final gun tower. Of course he wants to help. It was this screw-up that got Squadron 1 shot down in the first place. Wow. If Marquis Intel had spotted these gun towers, we'd all be safe in Luxembourg by now. There's only one reason I joined Mallory's band of resistance fighters. They put me back on the battlefield where I could kill Chimera. Nothing else matters to me anymore.
Oh yeah,
You're
you're
going to
totally
blame blows,
sane, my dude.
I said nothing! I'm perfectly sane, damn it!
Yes, Jimmy.
I'm not crazy. I'll kill anyone who says I am.
Jimmy! I mean, this is what Logan was doing during World War II.
You know, the attitude does match some iterations of Wolverine, so yeah, I could see it.
Alright, for a unique thing, you have to get literally inside the gun.
Huh. Okay then.
So you need to cooperate.
Listen, Tommy. I have just destroyed 2 gun towers. If you want to survive, just shut up and listen. Aye, aye, Captain. It's Colonel Mallery, Private. Come on, then. Lead, follow, or get out of the bloody way.
You need to stop writing this game.
Yeah, not
No,
gonna.
remember, Tail, we already established that his Huawei script ended up somehow in another day, as he himself said.
Alright, let's start with more leapers, but let me explain. If for anyone who has never played tanking on the PSP or has always used maybe an emulation these days, so it's more used to this, the PSP in resolution I think it was stuck in 480. Either
Even
480 or,
less than that,
360. 360, let's just say that at least. Meaning that every polygonal object had was without the anti-aliasing, and as a result there was a lot of jagged borders, a bit everywhere, which overall it helped mask a lot of effects and helped, still gives a bigger picture. It's kind of similar to what the sprites in the GBA and the SS Saturn games did, because they did not have clear borders. Fuck the mice, I forgot. Because they did not have clear borders, they were managing to look seamless. But instead, when the games actually started to be defined in HD, created potential uncanny valley effect as a result. So it's kind of a bit similar to this. I personally don't mind the upscaling of the models, to be honest. This is not too different than doing this for a PlayStation 1 game, for example, or even the 3DS emulation that did something similar to that.
From what I'm
This kind of thing is
observing,
more like on a game-by-game basis, more like.
from what I'm observing, it looks like they upscaled this for the PS4 release anyway. Well, digital, I believe it was. Like, let me guess, it was on PS Now essentially.
No. It's all digitally installed. Only the PS3 games tend to be streamable on with the PS Now service.
You can still stream it if you want, but okay. Here's how it is, Jova. You can stream it if you're trying to subscribe to Plus. You can play it as part of the subscription, but you can also individually purchase it for a fee. Basically.
So anyway, okay, what I meant is like, so they pretty much re-released this on, I guess, PlayStation Plus.
Yes,
it's technically free if you are subscribed to the higher tier PlayStation Plus, but in the simplest way of terms, Jova, it counts as a separate individual game you can easily, purchase from the PlayStation Store and play digitally on your own.
basically, like a virtual console, basically. But
basically, okay, just to mention this set piece, again, you're literally inside the gun and you need to watch out, you have to listen to when Mallery says to take cover, because that's when the gun shoots and the bullet, the case of the bullet gets ejected, so you need to watch out. Again, it's an interesting twist on, traversing a corridor with a, deadly object on it. That's pretty cool, actually. Go on, Pedro.
this release of Resistance, just like all of the other PS1, PSP, and now the upcoming PS2 re-releases on the 5 and 4, are all done by implicit conversions, which is a developer that Sony hired to handle
specifically for this purpose, yes.
I do want to give credit where credit is due. Like, I do see the upscaling. Like, it definitely looks like something better than what you would see on the PSP. And that's not even to dunk on the PSP, because the PSP, at least from what I remember, could turn in relatively good graphics, especially for a handheld at the time.
Crisis Core, Crisis Core on the original PSP was very impressive, but yeah, when you actually play it on PPS-SPP, like with full 1080p resolution, it looks even better.
And Mallery, left, Grayson to find another way on his own.
I love how...
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. He's not even short. I mean, don't get me wrong. That was obviously...
French stereotyping, Jova.
Okay, I mean, I have...
Yeah, don't you see, Jova? That's what all French people are like, obviously. A bunch of short people that surrender all the time.
And
Okay.
love Jerry Lewis.
Okay,
Anyway,
okay.
in more pleasant news, we have the returning enemies, the sleep skulls. We haven't been seeing these since the first game. So yes, they actually return jumping, and they do the usual stick jumping around, and target you with laser reticule. Well, that's pretty neat, actually.
They stick like mosquitoes.
You're also seeing here, this is the only major death that I will showcase, if I recall correctly, just to show you, how it is and something that happens when, when I die.
You dare get unique death animations for certain sequences.
Not really. This is not Cash Bazooka, sorry. Basically, what you need to do is to deactivate the gun bit by bit and move forward.
Follow emergency protocols. Render aid and gather weapons and supplies. Then report to command post.
Which command post, sir? There's like a few of them.
Let's just pretend there's only one. Yeah, you're gonna quickly learn how to dread the drones. And there you go. You get a gold trophy if you die for your first death.
That's nice.
Sure.
How nice! You get a trophy for dying.
Mind you, when the Dark Souls games have a tendency also to do this, but there is more play tongue-in-cheek. In here, it's treated again a gold trophy for the PlayStation game standards tends to be relegated for a higher to hard to accomplish kind of thing. This feels just a freebie that the game gives you like that.
I see my
again, even on easy mode, you're gonna die a lot in this game, so you need to watch out.
I've seen my fair share of games that do actually have an achievement for dying. So for me, it's not too uncommon to see games.
Oh, it's not that, Jova. It's the fact that it's specifically one of the higher tier, type of achievement for the Sony system.
I'd rather just stand there and let the enemy kill me, then I'll get the trophy.
Well, yeah, that's usually what a normal strategy will do, but considering in these kind of games you're gonna die a lot, it's practically inevitable that you're gonna get it.
So it is still a resistance game after all, though I'll give it credit, the difficulty feels much more balanced here.
It's a bit better, but you're gonna see still at least a couple of jump cuts, because keep in mind, this is compared to the previous 3 games, this is a blind playthrough that I decided to do just because I was committed to recording every facet of the franchise that I was possibly able to do.
Oh, that's fair and all. Like, heck, sometimes even an expert will die, but would you say the deaths at least felt fair?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's a bit all over the place. I can tell you that I had so far, again, still not over, but I have had my share of enjoyment with this. Again, the gameplay is not as fun as Freeze. You do have the weapon wheel, which you saw in the first part, but your weapon selection is okay, mostly similar to the one of the first game, with only a few things that do stand out, like the bullseye replacement, and they do not possess level up mechanic, which, to be fair, it was something introduced for free, and considering this game is based more on 1, I kind of get it why they didn't add it, so there's that. There you go. You also just seen the secondary fire of the bullseye replacement working. It functions like a mini grenade, just that instead of an arc trajectory, it travels, literally horizontally and has a bit of an area of attack. Again, really neat.
Alright then. Checkpoint. Nice of the game to let you know.
Yeah, well, even the other games told you when it happened, so it's just that you usually was stuck in a corner, while here it's actually used in the center of the screen.
I'm curious, does that checkpoint act as like a bit of an autosave too? Like, say you need to leave the game for whatever reason, it'll load you back to that?
I never tried, but I can imagine it's the case. Because I usually try to, pause in between doing the mission briefings, which do count as, auto-saving between levels.
In games like the Follow Cybertron or War for Cybertron games, you get like a chapter select for each level, which takes you to different points in the level, and depending on how far you've gotten through that level, those chapters will be unlocked.
You did showcase this recently, Jova, in Sonic Adventure 2 as well, even if it was a bit imprecise.
Oh, well, Sonic Adventure 2, that is strictly like, level by level by level. what I'm talking about with War for Cybertron, which is, also a third-person cover-based shoot. Well, not so much as much cover-based, but a third-person
more
shoot.
action-based rather than, cover-based, because, the Autobots and Decepticons had the ability to move a bit faster,
Yeah, like, a good way to describe it is kind of like Gears of War, except you can become your own vehicle. But I digress. In those ones, what I mean is, like, well, you have... well, okay, I guess, yeah, you have several different episodes, which are the levels, essentially. And the levels are long enough to have several chapter points in each one. And based off of how far you've gotten through that, the amount of chapter selects or, checkpoints or whatever you can select to go to are available from that point.
Alright, now it's time to blow up, again, we're basically here to blow up these artillery gun.
That was your doing, Bouchard? That's handy work. For a brawl.
Grayson, for fuck's sake.
Okay.
Can you stop being just such a twat?
Okay. I get it. The 50s were the 50s, but I mean, okay. Maybe it's because the other Resistance games shied away from this for obvious reasons, but my dude, clearly times are different since, the whole world is pretty much banding together against the aliens.
Let's not even do that, Jova. It's more simple than that. It's something that, yes, perfectly plausible that could have happened at the time, but just because it's plausible like that doesn't mean you should put it in.
I will say this also, quite a bold move to do this with the character that I assume we're supposed to like since we're playing as him.
I get what they're trying to, again, put this as more of a story about revenge with Grayson, instead of being more of a heroic figure like Nathan Hale. Instead, he's clearly much more of an anti-hero, more inspired by the 90s, which, not the best course of action to be inspired by stuff like Image Comics, stories done by Rob Liefeld, but I digress, The only major thing that's missing is him being super muscular with things bulging out of every bicep.
Okay. I will give the 90s this. Unlike the 2010s, the 90s didn't feel like they were going out of their way to be offensive. They were trying to essentially be edgy. This feels more like the...
Jova, you clearly haven't read the issues of Youngblood that deal with how they had to talk about AIDS and someone committing suicide.
Well, to Jova's credit, he said they weren't actively trying. He never said that there wasn't offensive stuff.
I still disagree on that. But
Regardless, I will hold that the 90s never were intentionally bad on that. Not so much for the 2010s, which definitely felt like it was intentional there. My point is, it feels like they're going out of their way to make Grayson a piece of work, and not even in a way... Well, okay, if he has character development, that's one thing, but again, I'll be honest, it is kind of hard to find anything endearing about him, and
we're trying to balance the idea of he's not, likable to your personality because of the tragedy that happened that made him a bitter man, as a result. But in order to compensate that, we're having him do the same cool shit that Nathan Hale did, as he managing to kill all these hordes of enemies sometimes by himself and destroy things left and right.
I guess maybe they'll have him have a noble sacrifice or whatnot.
Like I said, his character is a bit similar to BJ Blazkowicz, but even had he had his worst, BJ was still an heroic figure overall. The worst that happened was him maybe not caring about some, members of the resistance against the Nazis, but even then, there was still people that he wanted to defend in some capacity. He wasn't actively trying to insult them.
And for another thing, it's not impossible to make a lovable jerk who's politically incorrect. Mind you, it's not easy either, seeing as how, it's incredibly easy to mess up, and I do wonder if that's what they were trying to go for. It
also doesn't help that, again, having no experience with the Cyclone Filter franchise, I don't know if it's a recurring thing from these writers, because I can tell you that, while not on this level, the protagonist of Days Gone also has something similar going on with his personality. He's just not spouting, insults to everyone every 5 seconds. So don't worry about that.
I guess we could maybe compare him to the writing from Bubsy 3D.
What would a shooter game be without shooting?
Well,
If you
he certainly
go
has
back to
Yes, Pedro.
if you go back to the early seasons of The Simpsons, a lot of the characters did have that thing that Joe was talking about, trying to be the politically incorrect technically, but still lovable in their own way type of thing. Like, because, you know, compared to current Bart was much more, for lack of a better word, a much more nasty kid in comparison to how he is nowadays. Because it was meant to be a direct counter to the overly sanitized, really nice kids of 80s sitcoms, which Matt Groening used to call, and I'm quoting him, the sanitization of the American family. So it was intentionally made to be a direct jab at those sitcoms.
You gotta love it.
I still love those 80s sanitized sitcoms for what they are, if you know what you're getting yourself into. But I understand Matt Groening wanting to, you know, like he hated those, so I understand why he wanted to take a jab at
Mallery, I need help with the last shield.
You gotta love the irony that in making The Simpsons to counteract that cliche bout, he ended up generating the format for what is still to this day a heavily cliche
to use one of the gags from The Simpsons, it's kind of like the same thing that is the thing that Abe says to his son that says, "Oh, I used to be in with it, you know, but they changed what it was, and it will happen to you."
Sorry. That was always one of the, in my, again,
First, it means shit in French, in case you need to know. First boss fight, one of the Camion airships, and we get the Lark. The L206 Lark, like an anti-armor rocket, is an early model of the L209. Pressing the R button will launch a rocket munition. Pressing the L button poses a rocket mid-flight, somehow. While paused, select a new target with the reticule and press the L button to relaunch the rocket in the design direction. Pressing the R button will continue the pause rotor. Once again, the secondary fire of the rocket launcher continues to puzzle me in how it works in these games.
Thanks for the tip.
Anyway, there's your first boss fight, the one of the Camion airship. It's not too groundbreaking, but it does the job. Go on, Pedro.
That's always been, again, in my opinion, like one of the very strong issues, like a very strong problem that later Simpsons seasons had to overcome. Because The Simpsons was originally created to be a direct counter to the 80s status quo. When that status quo disappeared, Simpsons' original purpose was now gone, and they had trouble, you know, finding a new thing to be about. You know, it's kind of like how, like if you make something that's a direct parody of a time period, eventually once that time period goes away, so does your reason for existing. So a franchise usually has to adapt and change tremendously in order to, and unfortunately they did have a lot of trouble and went for a lot of.
I guess that's also the reason why the Trials of Horror specials tends to, you know, still consider usually the highlight, because rather than doing that, they're just parodying, you know, horror stuff.
Well, okay. Trials of Horrors also is that special time where they're not limited to the status quo, essentially.
Well, that's exactly what I meant. They're just doing, you know, something great in terms of parody.
I wouldn't say that all of it dials down to parody. They still do have some of their original stuff. I have heard that Simpsons has been getting better recently, and based off of some episode recaps I've seen, it does seem like they're getting out of some of the dumb and cliche patterns that they don't like. Like, there's apparently a future Simpsons episode that centers around Lisa, of all people, not going to college and not being perfect. God bless. Like,
that is nice. You know, like, I have to admit though, when I saw a recent episode starring that was focused on Marge, and I heard Julie Kavner, it really made my heart sink.
Okay, I legit wonder. Like, I know that Simpsons has kind of played fast and loose with what characters they will retire based off of an actor's death, or what characters they'll just recast nowadays, which really does make me wonder. If any of the main cast die, is that finally going to be where they throw in the towel?
I'll tell you this much, Jova. I refuse to hear anyone else other than Dan Castellaneta voice Homer.
Hurry, Tommy! Keep up! Just to be clear, Tommy, Bouchard insisted we recruit you, but I don't trust you. If you pull any shit in my army, it's off with your head.
Fuck you, Mallery.
Okay, I actually like that one.
Okay, you get one so far, Grayson.
Change your heading.
Everybody gets
Proceed
one.
to the emergency rally point.
Again, maybe they'll iron Grayson out later. Maybe.
You'll be able to see.
Yeah, I'll just say I don't have the best first impression of the guy so far.
Alright, to see you for the next part to see what new shenanigans Grayson will be thrown into. Yeah.
Cool,
See ya.
yeah.
See ya.